to their house and died in a wreck. And just, I mean, always doing the right thing, a good kid doing the right thing, and just that happens. And you think God's got a plan. If God had a plan, then it puts us through it, through the plan sometimes for a purpose. But it's always a purpose. That's a purpose for the kids. So it's Jeff Moffat's son, right, David? Jeff Moffat's. Anybody else? Prayer request? Okay. He had it in or has it? Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Mm-hmm. And that is to see, yeah. They had to wait like 3 weeks after the last of the treatments or something. 4 weeks. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Anybody else? Any unspoken requests that we'll pray about? Okay. Let's get Jonathan. You lead us in prayer. Okay, real quickly, I want to go. We're a little bit late tonight. I want to go to the lesson with the kids. Okay, so you can ask the kids later what the lessons are. Here's the lesson. We've been talking about Moses the last couple of weeks. Last week was God spoke to Moses from the burning bush, and the first thing he said was take your shoes off, Moses, you're on holy ground. But then when God called him, Moses started making excuses. He said, "What if they don't listen to me?" Okay, why would Pharaoh hear me? God says, "I'm with you." Okay, he said, "What the leaders of Israel, children of Israel, when they're going to ask who sent me?" And God said, "I am." Say that I am sent you. I am the only God. I am sent you. And Moses said, "I can't speak." It's my excuse. I can't speak. And God said, "Who made your mouth?" No, you did. So every excuse that Moses came up with, God had a response to it. And finally, after all Moses' excuses were laid out and God responded to all those things, finally Moses said, "Send somebody else." Okay? And God said, and it says, Exodus chapter 4, God kind of got frustrated with Moses, and he said, "Okay, I'll send Aaron with you. Aaron can speak." And because when you read through the rest of the book of Exodus, Aaron doesn't hardly say anything. Moses does all the speaking. But Moses is saying, "I can't speak." Okay, so, but God said, "Yeah, I made your mouth, and you can't speak." So the lesson for the kids was, God's got a perfect plan for every one of us. Okay, we may not understand it as things are happening. God's got a plan for us. He told Jeremiah, "Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee and ordained thee a prophet to the nations." God has a plan for us. And Moses is not a kid at this age. He's 80 years old when God calls him. And we think, well, God's done. But God's not done with anybody yet. As long as we're here, he's got a plan, right? So whether it's Moses, the baby in the basket, or Pharaoh's grandson, being brought up as Pharaoh's grandson, killing the Egyptian, 40 years on the backside of the desert with nothing going on other than getting married and having a couple kids, other than that, God's speaking to him. And God allows all these things to happen in our lives to get us to a certain point where he can use us the most. He did that with Moses. Okay? Anybody got questions about Moses in that part before we get to our lesson? Going once, going twice. Okay, we're going to. So that's the kids' lesson. Now we're going to First Timothy chapter 6. Excuse me, 2 Timothy chapter 4. 2 Timothy chapter 4. Second Timothy chapter 4. Yep, 2 Timothy chapter 4. Okay, 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. I'll read the first 4 verses and we'll stop and then we'll read through a couple more verses. I charge thee therefore, well, this is Paul, the older preacher, writing to Timothy, the younger preacher. I charge thee therefore before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearing and at his kingdom. Preach the word. Be instant, in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. For the time will come when they, just talking people he's talking to, when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. And they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. The time will come, he said, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine. What's sound doctrine? What does the word doctrine mean? It means teaching, just the framework of what we believe. Okay, we're there now as a nation, I think, and Timothy saw it too. But it happened in his day. It's happening in our day too. If you mix the denial of sound doctrine, you go back to chapter 3. Let's read a couple verses from chapter 3, verse 3. Verse 2 and 3 says, for men shall be lovers, verse 2, chapter 3, 2 Timothy 3:2 says this, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truth breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitor, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God, having the form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. When I look at that, I think that's like describing our society today, right? But that happened in Timothy's day too. And if the Lord delays his coming another 100 years, I think it will happen 100 years from now in our nation, some other nation, wherever, some society. I think every society has gone through this, okay, where they just refuse to listen. Like you have a revival. This happened in American history about 3 times, where like our forefathers, founding fathers, pilgrims, and going forward, the founding of a nation. Great, not to say religious people, righteous in the sight of God, born again by the grace of God, and living for God. Okay, then you got to decline because everyone starts living for money or things or whatever else, and then you have another revival, like depression hits or different chaos hits, wars hit, and there's a revival, and everyone gets right with God again, and it goes back on for a little while. But we get used to. Israel did the same thing. 400 years of history of Israel, they did the same thing. They have a revival, and the preachers would come along, and everything would go great, but it wouldn't last, and the society would decline. And that's happened then. It's happening now. Okay. Read a couple more things. Look at the chapter. Back up in chapter 3, verse 16 says, all scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. So the word doctrine's there again. Now chapter 4, verse 3 says, the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine. Okay, so what's the doctrine? Chapter 3 says the doctrine is what we believe, the framework of all that we stand for, we believe. Salvation by grace, divine authority of scriptures. Chapter 3, verse 16, all scripture is given by inspiration of God, and it's profitable for doctrine, for reproof. That's how you see your error. Like when you make a mistake, God sends up to correct you. Okay, for correction, that's how to fix the problems. I was listening today when I was driving down the road. People talking about the border between the United States and Mexico. Okay, and I don't know who the guy used to be over that 5 years ago or something like that. He used to be over the border, and he said we had less border crossings then. As like he thought he was talking the idea of there's about 400 people a year die crossing the borders, trying to swim across the Rio Grande or come across the desert. They die on the way. Last year there was like by his numbers is that about 800 to 900 people have died. That they find these bodies. I mean, ranchers, farmers down in Texas, Arizona, they find these bodies in their fields, on their ranches, where people cross the border and just starve to death, didn't make it. Ladies giving birth to babies. You hear tragic stories about children being raped, and ladies being raped over and over again by the cartels of the people that bring them over. And this guy was saying there's a lot of people in the government today that don't want to fix the problem. That there is a fix to the problem. They don't want to fix the problem. They just want to talk about the problem, right? And we have that in a lot of society, a lot of different areas of society. We want to talk about the problems, but don't want to fix the problems, right? Where was it 23% of our eighth graders can read proficiently? Marie, is it right? Is it great to teach? Is it a great job teaching eighth graders if they can't read? Right? You try to teach eighth grade English class, and you think of it whenever you. How long has it been since you taught? 10 years. Okay. Can you imagine if at that age, if 10 years ago, if 10% of your eighth graders couldn't read, it'd be bad. Now you got 70% of them can't hardly read, right? Okay, is there a fix? Is there a fix to the problem? There is a fix to the problem. Teach reading, writing, arithmetic instead of social justice stuff when you what they're teaching. Okay, but a lot of people don't want to sound. They don't want to sound doctrine. We're talking Bible doctrine. We'll go back to this. Goes back to Bible doctrine. Because the Bible is given for reproof, for instruction in righteousness. Like, here's the fix. Here's the problem. In every area of our society, God says, here's the fix. Here's the problem. Okay? I don't care what's political problems or educational problems. The problem is the decline of our society is walking away from God. And in the revival gets us back right with God again. Okay? As a nation. What does that mean? Kids read better? You have to pay attention to school. Okay? I mean, they can learn. They can learn. The parents can learn. Does that mean it'll fix our political problems? Yeah, it can. Okay? Spiritual revival. Okay? But men will not endure sound doctrine, sound teaching. Well, that doesn't make sense. Okay? So it kind of makes us, a lot of times they make us look like we're the enemy. With that, the question comes back to them, what is sound doctrine? Teaching people how to live their life. And a lot of people have the idea that this is old-fashioned, but it works. Okay? Well, why would we want to, what business is of Brother John, the preacher, to tell everyone else how to live their life? It's in the book. Okay? I'm going to back up a little bit. First, back to 1 Timothy chapter 3. Okay? We're in 2 Timothy chapter 3 and chapter 4. I want to back up to 1 Timothy chapter 3. Anybody got questions on this where we're at right now? Questions so far? Okay, back up 1 Timothy chapter 3. We said this when we read through 1 Timothy, maybe a month or so ago. 1 Timothy chapter 3. It gave the qualifications in chapter 3. It gives the qualifications of a pastor, an elder, and the qualifications of a deacon. Okay, and they're very similar. Okay. In chapter 3, verse 2 says this: a bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach, not given to wine, no striker, not greedy, not greedy of filthy lucre, but patient, not a brawler, not covetous. Is there anything wrong with any man being that? That's qualifications of a pastor, right? That doesn't say that's not saying what he does for a living. That's saying that's a qualification of what the pastor is supposed to be. Is there anything wrong with every man in the church be a husband of one wife, or vigilant, or sober-minded? Is there anything wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with being of good behavior? Good behavior is kind of thrown out the window a lot of times. Right, Marie, the 8th grade teacher, right? Good behavior is kind of completely out of. Is there anything wrong with people giving hospitality? That means you can be nice to people just because you want to. Okay, be hospitable towards people. Is there anything wrong with people with not giving the wine? Is there anything wrong with an abstinence from drinking? Is there anything wrong with it at all? If you say, I'm not going to drink. I know I mentioned this on Sunday morning message maybe a month ago when Bob Hogan's lost his job for drunk driving, coaching WU basketball coach. Okay, and I driving down the road, I listen to talk radio a lot, I listen to the news a lot, and a lot of people have all kinds of ideas. And I thought Danny Jones, the mayor of Charleston, called in a Hoppy Rituals statewide radio show, and he said 29 years ago he gave this place of humility, humbled himself, and he quit drinking completely. It doesn't mean he doesn't want to drink. right? And I'm sure for the next, what was it, how was it, 8 years or 12 years he was mayor of Charleston, I'm sure the drive him had to drink, right? Just being mayor. But he didn't. And he hasn't had a drink in 29 years. It's just the idea of, is anything wrong with not drinking? No. I did a funeral this past weekend for somebody, for a man that had passed. And his brother said to me, we did everything together. I mean, his brother, who was much, like 20 years younger than him, he said, we did, as men, as adults, we did everything, work, farming, everything we did together, okay? But he said, other than drink, we didn't drink. And I said, that's good. I mean, we didn't. Okay, why? Is there anything wrong with setting this Bible doctrine and saying, well, here's the boundaries, men will not endure sound doctrine. We'll go back to 2 Timothy chapter 4. Men will not endure sound doctrine. When you set the boundaries, say, I'm staying within the boundaries all my life. I will walk within these boundaries, and God says, I'm going to bless you for doing it. But our society doesn't want that. Okay? Well, if you take kids who's been molested, they may wish somebody had been taught that. You take kids whose dad gets drunk and beats them, they would wish somebody was taught. They would wish somebody taught their dad that. And you take kids that grew up in Sunday school whose dads don't drink, don't beat them, don't get in trouble, whatever. Then a lot of times those kids are like, well, I can't go out and have fun like all my other. But yeah, your other friends. There was a family in our church years ago that had the mom worked, the dad worked, they had good incomes, they had a decent home, they came to church here. The parents, the whole family got saved, and one of the boys, his friend came with them to their house, and this boy had taken for granted everything he had. Okay, they had all the electronic devices that they wanted. They had in their house. They had mom and dad at work. They had food in the refrigerator. They had everything that kid wanted, but he just took it for granted that that's the way it's supposed to be, right? And when his friends came over to his house, wow, you have all this? His friend was just shocked. And your parents are married? Yeah. I mean, his friend, he was a friend from school, came home with him, and was just, and that's what they drive, and that's what you have. But the boy that had all that stuff meant nothing to him. Meant nothing to him. Okay, y'all with me on this? Okay, but the kid that had none of that stuff was, well, I wish I had those rules. Okay, I wish I had those boundaries. I wish I had somebody with rules and boundaries watching after me. Okay, well, Brother House talked about. He's preached one time. He talked about disciplining children, and he said there was a high school senior. A boy came into his office after church on that Sunday. And he said, my parents never whooped me. He said, you preach. He's talking to preacher now. He said, you preach that if the parents love their child, they'll discipline them. He said, my parents never disciplined me. Okay? Will you whoop me? He said, I've never been whooped in my life. He did. The preacher did it. You know, why? Because we think that everybody. Okay, how many think that most of America wants our society to cave in? Anybody think that? I don't think most of America wants that. I think there's people in our society that wants it to collapse. Okay, politicians, societal leaders, or whatever, rabble rousers that turn everybody against stuff or whatever, want to turn the world upside down. You know, when they had the was it 2 years ago? Had Black Lives Matter riots, and they took over certain sections of cities, right? And there was murders and rapes and gang. I mean, it's worse than just the gangs. The whole city was turned upside down. There was nobody that owned businesses in that section of the city wanted it to be that way, right? If you had a grocery store, you don't want people walking out with your stuff. If you had an electronics store, you don't want to watch the TVs go out the door, right? I mean, okay, nobody wants that chaos, but a lot of people prey on that. Okay? So God says, I got this definition of what a pastor should be. I want every man to be that. Okay? I look at it and I read it, I want every man to be that. I want every lady to see what a godly lady is supposed to be. Read Proverbs 31. And I said, it's sound doctrine. take Proverbs 31, and every lady read that over and over again and said, that's my goal, to be like that. Okay? To be that, to whatever. There's a song with kids are singing back to back. We're going to sing it out here in a few words. Before I start each day, there is a special place. I love to go alone and seek my Savior's face. I find wisdom in His word to instruct me in His will. And I hear His gentle voice say, my child, be still. My quiet time alone gives me power to obey. That's the line I was getting to. My quiet time alone, that means my walk with God, praying and reading the Bible, gives me power to be obedient. Okay? Be obedient to God, and obedient to my parents, obedient to my boss, obedient to the police officer, obedient to the society, to live within the society. Why? To me, that's sound doctrine. It can control your entire life. But most people, we think, don't want it. I think they do. Okay? Illustration. The girls that sang here for us last Friday night, they went from our house, they went to several houses, went out, knocking on doors, and handing out tracts on Saturday morning with me. I went with them. I was just walking. I mean, I talked to a few people, but really I was just out there watching the girls. Just to keep them off the highway, off 21, go up and down 21, and they get talking. I'm afraid they're going to step out on 21. Yeah. They're not. I mean, they're used to doing that, but not where it's 55 miles an hour or 65 miles an hour down by our house. Goes straight. Anyway, two of the girls went to the door, knocked on the door. No one answered. So they walked. They got all the way back out after the road. They were turned to walk away, and the lady came to the door and said, "What do you want?" She said that. So one of the girls told me a story. They go to play the violin over on this end. They go to play the violin. She's got all those kids were funny anyway. She said, that lady comes to the door and said, "What do you want?" She said, "I wanted to talk to you." And she said, "What?" Now, the woman was yelling at her, from the porch to the road, saying, "What did you want?" And she said, she said, so I just yelled back at her, "I just wanted to talk to you about Jesus." And the lady said, "Oh, come on over." Okay? And she said, she talked to that lady about Christ, and that lady's, you're the plan of salvation. All of a sudden comes short of the glory of God. There's none righteous, no, not one. God commended His life toward us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. You go through the whole plan of salvation. Whosoever is called on the name of the Lord shall be saved. But when you do that, when you witness somebody, all of a sudden comes short of the glory of God. You know you're a sinner. And she said, that lady, she told us this later. She said, that lady said, "Yeah, I know I'm a sinner." She said, "I've run drugs most of my life." Okay? And she was looking for something. Okay? And that little girl took the gospel to her. Right? And she had to yell back at her to get it. But the lady, really the lady wanted to hear. Okay? And I thought about it. Of course, they were up here singing last week, and I cried for 2 days the whole time they were here. Now, Friday, Saturday, just talking to the pastor that was with them. He went to school there, and his wife's parents went to school there. When Tammy and I were in school, so the piano player, we went to school with her grandparents. That makes us happy. Does that make us feel old? Does that mean we're old? Okay. Anyway, I kept weeping just thinking about the idea that, as he said, our pastor out there says, our job is to go poke holes in the darkness, right? I mean, that is our job as Christians, to go poke holes. It's a world, is a very dark place. Sound doctrine says, I understand this, it guides my life. I will live by the principles that have been instilled in me. Okay? I've been taught this all my life. I will live by this because it is right. And whatever the consequences are for living right, I will do the right thing. Does that make sense? One of the illustrations that were given to us years ago was the guys that walk at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington Cemetery. Everybody will go there, Arlington Cemetery, a couple of weeks. And what's the guys' march? Do you know that they take a vow that they will never curse in public and they will never drink? Okay, there's sets of standards that those guys that when they volunteer for that, they say they understand this is for life. This is what I'm going to do. Right? I'm going to live this way the rest of my life. Okay. what every Christian in America would do take a vow like that. I'm not talking about not cursing and drinking. I'm talking about a vow that says, here's biblical standards I'm going to live by. Okay? I'll be honest in my dealings at work. I'm going to get a letter from the IRS. I don't know if they pay my taxes right now. Do it on the computer. See if it's on the computer was on. But say, I won't cheat on my taxes. You know, I won't cheat on anything. I'll be honest all my life. That is sound doctrine. And it's foreign to most of the people we know. Okay? But if you live that way, it stands out to everybody around you. Everybody you work with, your family members, your friends, your neighbors, it stands out. Okay? Men will not endure sound doctrine, but I tell you what, they really like it when they see it. Okay? Any questions? Comments? Let me stop right there. I had a lot more stuff written down, but I'm going to do it. Thank you, Lord, for loving us. I pray you'll direct us that we will live this life of sound doctrine, an example to our kids, grandkids, our family, our neighbors, our co-workers. Use us, please, for your glory, that we will be a witness for Christ and let it be everywhere we go. Give us boldness to speak up for Christ, wisdom to hand out tracts, to hand out a flyer to invite people to church, to invite people to Christ. Use us, please, for your glory. Help us be a light in our community. Forgive us where we come short. In Jesus' name we ask. Amen. Thanks for coming out this evening. Some of my kids are having fun, whatever they're doing upstairs. It's a lot of noise.